Coming up on today's video, crucial injury updates from all 20 Premier League teams, my final Game Week 11 wildcard team, the best forwards for you to buy, and much more. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, it's time to make those final decisions for Game Week 11. So as always guys, we are going to start off with all of the injury news from the press conferences this week. And guys, if you do enjoy or appreciate this information, make sure you do drop a like on the video. It really does help out the channel so much. But as always, every Friday, let's start you off with the first game of the game week, which is going to be Brentford versus Bournemouth. And for Brentford, Aya, Henry, Nunez and Thiago are still out, but they are apparently progressing rather well. So could be seeing some of these players back very soon, maybe after the international break, but this week is going to be too soon. Of course, De Silva and Hickey are out slightly longer term. For Bournemouth, Kepa is available following an adductor issue, and Ouattara and Sinisterra are still out. Still no return date for Scott, he is out long term. For Crystal Palace, Richards is back and available, which means Crystal Palace have loads of centre-backs available, but in the midfield and attacking positions, maybe not so much, as Nketiah joins Eze, Franca, Lerma, Chadi Riyad and Wharton on the injury list. It looks like a lot of these players will be back in game week 12 or 13 though. So it's not a long-term issue for many of these players, and I think Crystal Palace will get back to full strength within a reasonable amount of time. One issue is that Hughes is suspended for game week 11. So in the midfield areas, Crystal Palace really are lacking in game week 11. For Fulham, Lukic has a shoulder issue, but everyone else is available. So as soon as Lukic is back, we're going to have the full fitness Fulham back again. I'm looking forward to it. It's what they do best. For West Ham, Kudus has had his suspension extended until game week 14, so he is going to be out for even longer. And Alvarez is also suspended for this weekend too. Fulkrog is still out, very long-term absentee. It doesn't seem to be getting any better with his Achilles issue. And then for Everton, McNeil has had a flare-up with his knee issue, so that's kind of worrying news there. Might be time to sell McNeil now that our Southampton fixture is in the past. A little bit of concern there. Broja, Chimiti, Coleman, Garner and Irabunum are out for this game week. And Branthwaite, I know we've only seen him play a few minutes, but there is no issues. He is available and he's awaiting an introduction back into the first 11. The issue is Keane is actually playing quite well. So we could see some rotation there in the short term. If you are a Keane owner, you want to be aware that Branthwaite is possibly going to come in at some point or another. For Wolves, Hwang is back in training, though he may not be ready to start quite yet. But if you are looking to bring in Wolves attackers, just be aware that Hwang could eat into some of the minutes over the next few weeks. We might start seeing Hwang get a few more minutes. Of course, there's a good chance that Hwang, Cunha and Strand Larsen all play together, but it's just something to make a note of. Johnston has also recovered from an adductor injury, so we could see him come back into the goal instead of Sa, even though Sa has been doing reasonably well. And Mosquera, Kalajdzic, Traore and Gonzalez are out long term. For Southampton, Fraser has trained, but it's too early for him to play. And Bazunu, Smallbone and Stewart are longer term absentees. For Brighton, João Pedro and O'Reilly have a big chance to play this weekend, so we could see Brighton being a stronger and stronger team. Dunk and Minter have not been spotted in training. They are going to be doubtful for this game week. The rumours are saying that Dunk is not going to be back until after the international break, so it could be a benefit to Man City there. March, Milner and Webster are still unavailable, but I tell you what won't be a benefit to Man City. They do have a few players unavailable, so Grealish is still out despite his England call-up. Diaz and Stones, it looks like they're going to be out as well, as Pep Guardiola did say that there's no changes to the squad from the midweek Champions League game, which did not include Diaz or Stones. So could be some opportunities for some Brighton attackers with a lot of, obviously, Man City defensive players missing, Rodri as well for the season. And Bob is still a while away. The earliest return date for him is about 5 or 6 weeks, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. For Liverpool, there was some concerns about Konate last game week following a wrist injury that he sustained, but he's absolutely fine and good to go for game week 12. He's already got some minutes under his belt during the midweek game for Liverpool against Leverkusen. There's no update on Alisson, Chiesa or Elliott, so they are all presumed to be out, although I do think that there's a good chance Alisson could be back in game week 12 or 13. So yeah, hopefully Liverpool are going to be able to improve, start picking up some clean sheets again after that. And Diogo Diogo Jota, he will be back apparently in game week 13 or 14, so a little while longer to wait for him. As for Aston Villa, Rodgers, there was a little bit of a scare in game week 10, but he's going to be absolutely fine. He played in the midweek, so he's going to be good to go against Liverpool. And Barkley and Cash are out until at least game week 12. For Man United, Anthony, Eriksson and Mount are now available. They're returning to the squad for United. However, Shaw and Yoro and Malacia, despite being back in training, they are still out. And apparently they're going to be just a little bit longer. So if you are a Mazraoui owner or you're thinking about buying Mazraoui, for example, just be aware that there is going to be some competition for the left-back slot in the very near future. That might impact Dalot as well a little bit as the new manager, Amorim, kind of finds his best 11. So let's see what happens there. Don't want to speculate too much, but just a warning. There are defenders coming back for Manchester United, and that may shake things up a little bit within the next couple of weeks. Mainu and Maguire are still out for sure, however. Leicester, Daka, he's back in training, but he's not going to be rushed back, so Vardy should be good for one more game week at least. Chowdhury is also in training, and Decordova-Reid and Stalazic, they are going to be out for this game week. For Nottingham Forest, Ward-Prowse is available again following facing his parent club in game week 10. So, yeah, good news there. And Danilo and Sangare are still out. Those guys are longer-term absentees. And for Newcastle, Murphy is expected to be available following a hamstring injury. Target has been back in training, and Trippier and Wilson are still out. Time for Spurs, and Van der Ven is going to be out for some time after game week 12, apparently, according to Ange Postecoglou. So he's not going to be ready back for the Man City game in game week 12. Probably we're looking at game week 13, if we're being realistic here. So, yeah, bad news there. Romero, however, is probably the good news here, as it looks like he is going to have a late assessment and does have a chance to play in game week 11. So Romero is still a chance. Van der Ven is out for this game week at least. Very unlikely for game week 12, and then we'll kind of have a look at that again from game week 12-13 to see what the situation is there. Son's minutes apparently will continue to be managed. He's kind of been playing 45, 55 minutes over the last couple of games, and Ange Postecoglou kind of stressed that he doesn't want to rush Son back and risk another injury, because obviously Spurs already have a few players who are missing. Werner, for example, is not going to be available for this game week. So yeah, Son apparently going to be managed a little bit. Don't know if he plays 90 minutes against Ipswich. I think that's probably pushing it a little bit. Ipswich, Greaves, Tuanzebe and Taylor are all out, but could be back for game week 12. Phillips, however, is suspended for game week 11, and Ogbene is out for the season, as we know, or at least likely out for the season. There's a chance he could be back before game week 38, I suppose. But yeah, a few missing players for Ipswich and maybe some opportunities for your Spurs players. And here's the big game of the weekend. Palmer is getting better for Chelsea and hopeful to face Arsenal. He's going to have a late assessment, and I think it's looking reasonably positive. There's no significant injury there, but I think the manager, Maresca, is hoping to get a training session in on Saturday, tomorrow, before we know for sure if he is going to start or not. But I think it's looking pretty positive. Palmer is still in the England squad, hasn't pulled out of that as time of recording. Sancho has a knock, so that's the only other issue for Chelsea. But for Arsenal, Havertz has a head injury. Rice has a toe injury. Marino's ill. These guys are all going to have late assessments. So actually, there could be a few missing players for Arsenal. Hopefully, all of them are going to be able to play, though. But just something to be aware of. You do wonder if this is more Arteta dark arts, though. But Ødegaard was back in the squad on Wednesday, managed to get a couple of minutes as well in the midweek against Inter Milan. So, yeah, a big boost for Arsenal to have Ødegaard back. I think we should start thinking about bringing in some more Arsenal players in very soon, but we'll probably wait until after this Chelsea game. Of course, Sterling cannot face his parent club, Chelsea, and that is it for our team news. But there's still so much to talk about. Just going through some of my predictions for this week's results, I think we're probably going to be looking at a draw between Brentford and Bournemouth, but a lot of the other games, I think the better team will win in general. We've got teams like Wolves and Manchester United and Spurs facing newly promoted teams, and I think that all of them should get the result. Man City, I think, will beat Brighton, and Chelsea versus Arsenal, I'm afraid I see this as a draw, particularly if Arsenal are missing a couple of those players, as we mentioned. If you guys think you can predict this weekend's results better than me, then make sure you use the link at the top of the description to check out the Sleeper app. We're running a prize league for the FPL Mate subscribers, I suppose, where you can win some great prizes every month, and this prize is at the end of the season. But guys, get started straight away. It's never too late to join in and start winning prizes. We do monthly prizes, so yeah, it doesn't matter if you're starting late on. Get involved, guys. Link in the description. Let's keep going. So just looking through the spread betting clean sheet odds, and it actually is quite interesting as we see teams like Spurs and Manchester United right at the top of this list, which I don't think I was really expecting to see. Typically, we don't think of Spurs or Manchester United as particularly strong defensively, and we do see these teams conceding chances, but they're both playing at home. Spurs actually have okay defensive numbers. Manchester United have this knack of keeping clean sheets. So in a way, I understand why they're there, but we're not seeing the likes of Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal at the top of this list anymore, neither Nottingham Forest. So we could see some differential defenders actually picking up some clean sheets here. Liverpool are in third place against Aston Villa due to their great defensive numbers. The fixture is a little tough though. Wolves are up here. They're considered a poor defence, but they've been given a 33% chance of a clean sheet, which is actually really significant. And there's various other teams with an okay chance of a clean sheet as well. One that I found interesting was actually Crystal Palace against Fulham. 27% chance of a clean sheet. That was better than I expected. Of course, at the bottom, we're not expecting clean sheets from teams like Brighton, Aston Villa, Leicester or Ipswich. So they sit right at the bottom there with Arsenal and Chelsea just below mid-table for their clean sheet chances. So if you're wondering which defender should you play this game week, well, try and pick players from the left side of this graphic. Spurs, Man United, Liverpool, Wolves, even West Ham, Man City and Newcastle, maybe even Palace. These are your guys to go for. And as for the goal scorer odds, well, I know a lot of people are going to scream at me and say, no, this is not right. How can this possibly be right? But Erling Haaland is still number one. Highest chance of a goal of any player in the Premier League for game week 11. 0.75 projected goals against Brighton, which is, it's maybe not as much as previous game weeks, and it does seem like the odds are adjusting to Haaland's form, but it's still a pretty decent sized number there. Salah is in second with 0.68 projected goals, but we do have to factor in Salah's assist potential, which is obviously very good indeed. Solanke and Son come in just behind. They faced Ipswich, of course. And then we've got players like Darwin, Højlund, Gakpo, all with pretty decent chances to score as well. Lots of Manchester United, Liverpool and Spurs players on here. These guys seem to have the highest chances of attacking contributions for this game week, but it also should be noted that we don't see any Wolves players making up the top players for the goal scoring odds, despite the fact that they do have a very good fixture. Unfortunately, there is just a lot of better teams who have fixtures that are just as good, maybe almost as good. So that's why we're not seeing too many Wolves players here, but in fact a lot of players from some of the more traditional big six teams with the higher goal scoring odds this week. Okay, so it's been 10 game weeks, so I thought this is a great time to start having a look at the defensive numbers from all the Premier League teams so far. As I think we've now been given enough time. Most teams have played a decent balance of fixture difficulty, maybe with the exception of Wolves, and we can kind of judge now who are the better defences, who are the worst defences. And at the top, we do see Liverpool, 7.9 non-penalty goals against, which is expected goals against, which is really, really nice, really low. That's what we like to see. And we see Nottingham Forest and Arsenal making up the top three here. So these are kind of the teams that we probably consider to be the best teams when we're looking for clean sheets moving forward. So if you're thinking about targeting defenders for the long term, these are the kind of teams you might want to look at. Of course, you've got to take into consideration fixture difficulty as well there. Man City, Aston Villa, Chelsea and Fulham also pretty high up on this list. Fulham are for sure interesting because we can get some cheap defenders from them, and their fixtures are reasonably good as well in the short term. And then looking towards the bottom, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich right at the bottom here, really disappointing. Wolves are here as well, which you can kind of understand why. Maybe they can improve in some more favourable fixtures, but we've seen Manchester United really low for these underlying numbers, despite having kept 4 clean sheets. So Man United are a difficult one, but again, I think we're still looking to target Brentford, West Ham, Wolves, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich, really as the teams we want to attack with our FPL players. These are the good fixtures you want your attackers to be facing against, and these are the teams as well that you probably don't want to have any defenders from unless they have significant attacking output, like an Aït-Nouri from Wolves, like a Davis from Ipswich. But I thought this was really interesting, and I think this is really good for context moving forward. You can see the teams that are the best defenses and the worst defenses, and we can now move on with that information when we go forward with our FPL picks. So a lot of you guys are looking to buy a new forward this game week, and I think on this list I've included every forward you guys might be considering buying for Game Week 11. Maybe the one player who's missing from this list is João Pedro, but João Pedro hasn't played in a while. He's not even really guaranteed to start against Man City, and I wanted to really display the stats per start for game week 6 to 10. So we've got a 5 game week period. We can get a good idea of what kind of form these forwards are in, because form is really important for forwards, as we know, as Haaland owners will know very, very well. So these are the kind of forwards we're looking at. I've ordered them by expected points so far this season. So this is kind of a good rough estimate. It adds together things like XG, expected assists, bonus points as well. And it adds it all together to kind of predict how many points roughly would we have expected a player to have gained per start during this 5 game week period. And Isak comes out on top, 6.2 expected points in these fixtures. He's doing pretty well at the moment in 3 starts during this period. Smaller sample size, but he's had 4 shots, 1.7 big chances per game, 0.7 XG per game, and he is a penalty taker as well, which is really useful. The difficulty is that Isak faces Nottingham Forest away next, which is no good at all. After that, though, West Ham and Crystal Palace could be much nicer fixtures for him. He is top of this list, but he is also the most expensive player on this list, and that does need to be taken into consideration, because when we look down, we see some cheaper options like Raul Jimenez, and his numbers are phenomenal. They really are. 3.6 shots per game, 0.5 XG per game, another potential penalty taker for us here, and he's actually underperforming at the moment. And with good fixtures in the next 4, you would imagine that he will be able to really capitalize on that. So the statistics here, the data, the analytics are pointing towards Raul Jimenez as probably the best value for money forward to buy right now if you don't already have him. Solanke is on here as well. He's got pretty decent numbers and a great fixture in game week 11, but the fixtures do get tougher from game week 12. So Solanke is probably only worthwhile as a 1-week punt in game week 11 before choosing to move him on for the following game weeks after that, unless you really do trust him. Wissa is an interesting case. We have a very small sample size, and even though his numbers are good, the few games he has played have mostly been against some of the weaker oppositions in the Premier League, and that's where he seems to be picking up most of his FPL points. So it's not to say Wissa is a bad pick, but he's not on penalties. His data is skewed by the fixtures he's played in as well. So I do worry about that a little bit, but he's still worth considering for sure. We've got some nice fixtures coming up for him as well. Danny Welbeck continues to put up good numbers. He continues to score goals as well. Man City up next, which might not be such a bad fixture after all. And even though João Pedro is coming back, I don't think João Pedro really impacts Welbeck's minutes too much. And also, I don't think Ferguson is going to start ahead of Welbeck right now, given Welbeck is in such good form. Brighton aren't in any other competition. So I think Welbeck is a really good pick still. After that, Jackson against Arsenal, maybe not thinking about him too much. Wood, his numbers aren't actually that good. Even though he's like the top scoring player on this list, his numbers, they're okay, but they're really nothing special, and the fixtures are much tougher for him. So I would maybe be moving away from Wood at this point in time. If you don't have Wood already, I would maybe just leave it, maybe go for someone else. If you have Wood already, of course, you would absolutely keep him. Cunha and Strand Larsen, unfortunately, are lower down on this list, and I know some people will say, well, they have had some tough fixtures, but actually, over the past 4 or 5 game weeks, they've actually played some pretty easy fixtures. They've played against Brentford, who are a good team, but very weak defensively. They've played Crystal Palace. They've played Brighton, another team that has been quite weak defensively. So I wouldn't take too much notice of the fixture argument for these guys, and I would kind of take them at what they are, which are, you know, maybe they're okay numbers, but they're nothing spectacular, and more focus on the fixtures here. And Southampton is a great fixture for any player, no matter what data you're putting up. If you are an attacker playing against a team like Southampton at home, you are going to have huge opportunities to score. After that, I think Cunha and Strand Larsen may struggle in the Fulham and Bournemouth games compared to some of these other players, but the great fixture against Southampton and the good fixtures from game week 14 onwards might make up for that. Evan Nilsson is pretty low on this list, unfortunately, despite the fact that he probably has some of the best fixtures on this list. Højlund has amazing fixtures in the next three, but his data is pretty much non-existent. So if you are to go for Højlund, it would be a very speculative pick. Not really backed up by anything, but more like a gut feeling. I think Højlund is going to start doing well because we don't really have any evidence of it so far this season. So which forward do you like the look of the most? I think Raul Jimenez is certainly very interesting on here. Solanke is nice for this game week. Isak is nice for after this game week. I wonder if any of you guys are considering a Solanke to Isak or Jackson move in game week 12. That could work quite well. But yeah, there you go. Those are your forwards. Let's move on. So an argument people seem to be having every single game week is, should you move Haaland to Salah? It's going to take 2 transfers to do that, but should you do it? And I've just put on screen the arguments for making this transfer and the arguments against making this transfer. And honestly, guys, you are going to think some of the arguments are more important to you than others. So, for example, the first argument for selling Haaland for Salah is that Haaland is not in form, Salah is. And for you, that might be the most important factor to consider at all. But I do want to try and present both sides of this argument. The other good things about selling Haaland and bringing in Salah, it allows you to upgrade and forward to a 7 million plus guy like a, Solanke or an Isak or a Jackson. All of which, to be fair, might actually be more worthwhile in game week 12 rather than doing it in game week 11. But also allows you to maybe bring in a player like Trent into your team if you couldn't afford it before. This also might be your only route to get 3 premiums into your team. We're speaking a lot about trying to have 3 premium players in your team from game week 12 onwards. And it might mean selling Haaland is the only way you can do that realistically. The other good thing to do, to consider, is that Salah is the standout captain for game week 12 against Southampton. Palmer may be a consideration as well. Well, I think a lot of people would love to captain Salah in game week 12. So it's not just about this game week, and Salah is certainly a captain option for this game week, but also next week as well. So those are some arguments for selling Haaland and bringing in Salah. Here's the other side though. So the game week 11 fixture matchup, in terms of, from a tactical point of view, probably favours Haaland. And if Haaland was in the equal form of Salah, and he's not, by the way, I would be probably telling you that Haaland is the better captain this game week. Now, that's not the case, but if Haaland does magically find his form in game week 11, I actually like this fixture better for a haul than Salah. So anyway, Haaland's underlying numbers are still better than Salah's. So if you care about underlying numbers, then that does favour Haaland. De Bruyne is back, of course, and of course, an argument against making this move is that it will cost you a minimum of 2 transfers, maybe even 3 if you want to start spreading the funds around from selling Haaland. So there are pros to doing it, there are cons to doing it, and it's going to be about, what do you value? Do you love a player in form? Do you want to back a player with good underlying numbers? Do you think Haaland can turn it around? Or do you want to make sure you have that great captain for game weeks 11 and 12? Lots of different things to debate here. What's important to you, and that's going to decide whether you make a move like this or not. I've made a wildcard draft for game week 11. If you are wildcarding in game week 11, I would do something a little bit like this. Although I would advise, if possible, maybe try and wildcard in game week 12. I think there are some nicer fixture swings in game week 12 and a nice international break where it might be more beneficial for a game week 12 wildcard. But here's a game week 11 one, just in case you do want to go early. We've got Sells in goal, a defence of Alexander-Arnold, Ait-Nouri and Gabriel. Really like Gabriel for the longer term after the Chelsea game. In midfield, we've got Salah, Saka and Palmer as our 3 premiums. And the midfield is completed by Mbeumo and Semenyo. You could also potentially go for Rodgers in that 5th midfield slot. Up front, we do have Jackson and Strand Larsen. I know some of these players, Arsenal and Chelsea players, aren't ideal for game week 11, but from game week 12 they look great. That's why Game Week 12 is slightly better for that wild card. And of course, on the bench, we have Fabianski, João Pedro, who I think is going to be a brilliant FPL asset very, very soon. Anderson provides a nice, cheap 4.3 million defender from Fulham, and Burgess, a 3.9 million Ipswich defender, which is okay. It'll fill the final bench slot. Hopefully, you'll never need to play this guy. But we've got some nice cover on the bench here. It's a very strong squad in general, with some great fixtures coming up, mostly from Game Week 12 onwards, but I still think this is a nice squad for the long term, as well as capitalising on the short term with Aït-Nouri and Strand Larsen for Game Week 11. You probably would be looking to bench Strand Larsen for João Pedro after this game week for a couple of weeks, but I think that's going to be fine. A João Pedro, Strand Larsen, Semenyo, three-man attacking rotation works really, really well. It works well with Rodgers as well. This team costs 101 million. I hope most of you guys will be able to afford this, but if not, there are some downgrades you can make, like taking Semenyo down to someone cheaper, or maybe going for Raya and Moreno instead of Sells and Gabriel. That shaves off a little bit of the budget there as well. So that is my favourite wildcard for Game Week 11. This is what I would do if I was wildcarding in Game Week 11. And we'll go to our final page of the video. And that's going to be the Fantasy Football Hub top predicted points. Of course, there's always a link in the description for you to get your free trial to Fantasy Football Hub and start having a look at some of this stuff yourself. But Salah's got the highest predicted points. He is the recommended captain according to this particular analytical model. Haaland coming in second, not too far behind, 7.5 predicted points for him. Son, 7.4 predicted points, and after that we've got Saka and Palmer with 6.8 and 6.7 predicted points respectively. I think if Palmer is available and his flag is cleared, we might even see him jump above Saka in the rankings here. But this is your top predicted points players. It seems that if you're trying to captain someone, Salah and Haaland seem to be the two obvious choices, but I wouldn't ignore those Spurs players. And if you're feeling really risky, maybe even a Manchester United player. But we'll leave things there, guys. Hopefully this has been a really useful video for you. If you did find it useful, make sure you drop a like before you go. Subscribe if you want this kind of content every single week. And check out another video if you like. We've uploaded loads this game week. But until next video, I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.